The new global money game didn't begin with a financial crisis. It began with a convergence, three forces colliding in real time, reshaping the economic order faster than nations can understand it. Artificial intelligence, rising geopolitical conflict, and relentless inflation are no longer separate stories. According to many analysts, they are becoming a single engine that may redefine power, wealth, and stability throughout the 21st century. And here's what nobody tells you. The world has entered a cycle where breakthroughs in technology accelerate conflict, conflict accelerates money creation, and money creation accelerates inflation. This is where the pattern begins. Not with banks or budgets, but with the invisible race to dominate the future's most strategic resource, intelligence itself. To understand how quietly this transformation is unfolding, let me show you exactly how the past is whispering warnings into the present. In 1914, Europe marched into World War I with gold-backed currencies and faith in financial order. By 1918, nations had printed so much money to fund the war effort that inflation surged, currencies snapped, and the old monetary world collapsed under its own weight. Then, from 1939 to 1945, the same pattern repeated, only bigger. Governments flooded economies with spending to fuel wartime production, and the financial system rewired itself into something entirely new. Militaries shaped money, money shaped geopolitics, and geopolitics shaped global power. But that was war fought with steel, oil, and industry. Today's battlefield is different, digital, instantaneous, driven by algorithms that learn faster than economists can interpret. And yet, the financial pattern unfolding now mirrors the old cycles with alarming precision. Military competition pushes governments toward unprecedented spending. Spending fuels inflation that nations try to hide or rationalize. Inflation pushes central banks toward desperate strategies. And every time in history this formula appears, the monetary world that follows looks nothing like the one before. The Cold War offers a second, sharper warning. From 1947 to 1991, the United States and the Soviet Union waged a global contest not just with weapons, but with currencies. Each superpower tried to control trade routes, commodity flows, and the monetary systems of its allies. The U.S. leveraged technology, oil, and financial infrastructure to build the dollar into the foundation of global commerce. The Soviet Union used resource extraction, state planning, and geopolitical pressure to maintain its sphere. It was not missiles that determined which currency would dominate. It was the ability to control energy, intelligence, and economic information. Now, in the early 21st century, a new Cold War, one defined by AI, may be quietly rewriting the rules again. Everyone thought artificial intelligence would revolutionize business. Then the bill arrived. AI required vast amounts of energy, rare minerals, cloud capacity, and data. Nations capable of producing or controlling these inputs suddenly found themselves holding the keys to the next monetary age. Those without them faced a dangerous dependency. And the danger wasn't what they saw. It was what they ignored. Because AI is not just a technology. It is a geopolitical multiplier. The nation that leads in AI gains an edge in cyber warfare, economic forecasting, automation, and military strategy. And analysts suggest that these advantages compound into monetary influence, the same way industrial dominance once elevated currencies into global reserve status. Here's why this matters now. Across the world, inflation is no longer a background concern. It is a structural consequence of geopolitical pressure. Wars disrupt shipping lanes and food supplies. Sanctions fracture trade networks. Nations pour billions into weapons, energy security, and technological infrastructure. Central banks inject liquidity to stabilize fragile economies. And the cycle repeats. War fuels inflation. Inflation fuels political tension. Political tension fuels more war. It's not new, but AI accelerates each step at unprecedented speed. Consider the digital front lines. When cyber attacks disrupt pipelines, ports, or electrical grids, they weaken the underlying foundation of currency stability: trust. A currency is only as strong as the system that protects it. Nations deploying AI-driven cyber capabilities can subtly undermine rivals without firing a single shot, triggering supply shocks that ripple across the global economy. and once inflation takes hold, history shows that it rarely retreats easily. In 1973, during the oil embargo, inflation surged across the West as energy supplies tightened. Prices rose, currencies weakened, governments panicked. That wave reshaped monetary policy for decades. Now imagine a world where energy itself becomes unstable, not because of scarcity alone, but because of targeted cyber interference powered by AI. This isn't science fiction. Analysts argue this scenario is plausible in any conflict involving major powers. And if this pattern applies, then the world may be entering a monetary era where the stability of currencies is tied not to commodity reserves or interest rates, but to digital security. There's another layer, one that quietly shifts the balance even further. AI requires chips, and chips require rare minerals found largely in Africa, South America, and parts of Asia. Geopolitical competition for these resources mirrors the oil struggles of the 20th century. Nations with access to these minerals gain economic leverage. Nations without access face inflationary pressures as supply chains tighten. But unlike oil, which powered machines, rare minerals power intelligence itself, not fuel, capability, dominance. Everyone thought global supply chains made the world safer. They didn't. They made it vulnerable. And in a period of rising conflict, the same interconnected system that once created efficiency now amplifies scarcity and inflation. Here's the mechanism. AI supercharges the ability to gather intelligence. Intelligence shapes military strategy. Military strategy drives government spending. Spending drives inflation. Inflation pushes nations toward monetary reinvention. It happened before with the Industrial Revolution. It happened again with the nuclear age. Now, analysts suggest it may be happening with artificial intelligence. But beneath all these surface-level forces is something deeper. Inflation today is not simply the result of demand overheating or supply shocks. It is becoming one of the quiet tools of geopolitical power. Nations may use inflation strategically to reduce the real value of debt, strengthen export competitiveness, or pressure rivals whose currencies depend too heavily on foreign trade. Not war, monetary leverage. But every tool has a cost, and inflation's cost is always borne by ordinary people. Savings erode, purchasing power fades, and the promise of financial stability dissolves. At first, governments appear to manage the situation. Then the bill arrives. Central banks raise rates, but inflation doesn't fully retreat. Governments spend more to offset economic pain, but that spending creates new inflation. Debt loads swell, and nations begin walking a tightrope between stability and default. This is where the danger lies. Not in the crisis people expect, but in the slow unraveling they don't. And here's what nobody tells you. The relationship between AI, war, and inflation is not linear. It's exponential. AI accelerates decision-making in conflict. Conflict accelerates financial instability. Financial instability accelerates the adoption of new monetary systems. And once a new system begins to form, the old one doesn't die overnight. It erodes, quietly at first, and then all at once. Which leads to the biggest question of all, the one only Section 2 will answer. If AI transforms the way nations fight and the way money moves, who or what will control the financial world that emerges from this new global struggle? Because every monetary revolution in history has crowned a new winner, and in this one, the winner may not be a nation at all. The transformation that began quietly now unfolds in plain sight, though most people don't yet see its shape. The world believed artificial intelligence would remain a tool, neutral, mechanical, obedient. But analysts suggest the opposite is becoming true. AI is evolving into the infrastructure through which geopolitical power flows. And once that infrastructure becomes the backbone of military planning, resource allocation, and financial systems, the global order begins to shift in ways nations can neither predict nor fully control. This is where the pattern continues, not with a sudden collapse, but with millions of small recalibrations that push humanity toward a new monetary era. To understand what's happening, imagine the world's financial system as a nervous system. For decades, it carried signals. interest rates, trade data, supply chain flows, slowly enough that human institutions could react. But now the signals move at the speed of algorithms, processed by models that forecast demand, prices, and geopolitical tensions with unprecedented accuracy. Economists describe a future where AI-run central banks respond to inflation faster than any committee could. Algorithms may adjust liquidity, shift currency reserves, or modulate digital interest rates in real time. At first, this looks like a miracle. Stable prices, efficient planning, automated protection from market shocks. Then the bill arrives. Algorithms don't negotiate. They don't compromise. And they don't consider the social consequences of their decisions. If an AI-controlled monetary system detects rising war risk, it may restrict liquidity overnight. If it anticipates runaway inflation, it may tighten money so aggressively that millions lose access to credit. In this scenario, national monetary policy becomes less democratic and more deterministic, shaped not by elected officials but by the logic of the machines that oversee it. Here's what nobody tells you. Every major shift in the global monetary order has been triggered by a change in power technology. The introduction of steel and steam distributed manufacturing dominance. Oil and aviation reshaped 20th century military strategy. Nuclear power restructured alliances and deterrence. And now, data, vast, unstoppable, self-replicating, is the new strategic resource. If oil powered the last century's empires, intelligence will power the next. Data trains the models. The models power the weapons. The weapons shape geopolitics, and geopolitics reshapes money. Take the rise of digital conflict. In recent years, cyber attacks have disrupted pipelines, ports, banks, and energy grids. But analysts argue that the next phase will be different. AI will search for vulnerabilities, deploy attacks, and coordinate defense autonomously. These attacks could destabilize national currencies without ever touching a battlefield. A malfunctioning energy grid triggers shortages. Shortages spark price spikes. Price spikes feed inflation. Inflation pressures central banks into emergency decisions. The chain reaction accelerates faster than any human-led system can intervene. Everyone thought inflation was simply an economic problem. They were wrong. Increasingly, inflation behaves like geopolitical turbulence, shaped by sanctions, resource conflict, cyber interference, and AI-driven supply chain distortions. Wars are no longer fought only with soldiers or missiles. They are fought with money supply, interest rates, digital infrastructure, and algorithmic pressure. Nations can erode the economic stability of their rivals without ever firing a shot. And if this pattern applies, then inflation today is not just a symptom. It may be one of the most strategic weapons in the modern arsenal. Let me show you exactly how the mechanism forms. As nations compete for control of semiconductor production, rare minerals, and AI research dominance, they pour trillions into subsidies, industrial policy, DOS, and military reinforcement. This spending increases debt faster than economic growth can compensate. Inflation follows. To combat inflation, central banks raise rates, making new debt more expensive. Governments then inject money to prevent recession, fueling the cycle again. Here's the trap. The more nations spend to maintain geopolitical advantage, the more they accelerate the erosion of their own monetary stability. This is not theoretical. History warns of this pattern. During the final decades of the British Empire, defense costs soared as rivals industrialized. Britain printed money, sold debt, and devalued the pound to maintain global influence. Eventually, the world turned to the dollar. In the Soviet Union's final years, military overreach strained the economy until inflation and scarcity shook the state from within. And according to some political economists, similar pressures now challenge the United States, China, and Europe. Not identically, but rhythmically. Great powers lose monetary dominance when technological and military competition drains their economic foundation faster than innovation replenishes it. This leads to one of the most important emerging questions of the century. Who benefits from a world where AI, war, and inflation converge? Some analysts argue the beneficiaries may not be nations at all, but corporations. The entities building the world's most advanced AI models possess more data than most governments. more computational power than many militaries, and more influence over global markets than traditional institutions. Their systems could shape the flow of trade, advertising, political messaging, and financial prediction. If AI becomes essential infrastructure, then the companies that build and maintain it may wield geopolitical influence comparable to states, not empire, platform empire. Another scenario indicates a world divided into digital blocks, one led by AI-heavy democracies, another by AI-surveillant autocracies, and a third by nations trying to navigate between them. Each block may create its own digital currency, its own settlement network, its own standards for data sovereignty. In this world, citizens might cross currency borders not by moving between countries, but by switching platforms. Money becomes identity. Identity becomes leverage. There is also a more destabilizing scenario, one economists worry about but rarely discuss publicly. If AI creates staggering productivity gains while inflation remains high due to geopolitical fragmentation, the world may enter an era where currencies fluctuate violently. Nations could weaponize monetary shocks. Automated sanctions may freeze assets instantly across thousands of institutions. Digital trade corridors could reroute global commerce overnight. In such a world, money becomes a battlefield, not a tool. Here's the mechanism behind this future. AI runs the models predict conflict, governments react, markets convulse, inflation surges, central banks intervene, AI analyzes the intervention, the cycle accelerates. A feedback loop too fast for human comprehension. But the most profound shift appears in a quieter, more subtle place: the psychology of economic trust. For centuries, people believed in money because they believed in the institutions behind it: banks, governments, courts, trade networks. But what happens when trust shifts from institutions to algorithms? When people rely on AI's predictions more than political assurances? When currencies are judged not by gold reserves or GDP, but by the stability of the digital infrastructure that supports them? This is why analysts suggest the future of money may not belong to the most powerful nation, but to the most resilient network. A currency backed by secure AI systems, stable digital infrastructure, and low vulnerability to cyber disruption might outperform traditional reserve currencies. Not because of national strength, but because of systemic intelligence. And here's why this matters for ordinary people. Every shift in monetary architecture changes the value of savings, the cost of food, the security of jobs, and the stability of everyday life. When AI shapes monetary decisions, inflation could turn volatile in unpredictable ways. When war pressures global supply chains, prices swing without warning. When governments compete for technological dominance, debt swells and currencies weaken. The global money game is no longer played by humans alone. The final question remains, the one this entire transformation leads toward. If AI accelerates geopolitical conflict and geopolitics accelerates inflation, who controls the new money game? Is it nations, corporations, algorithms themselves? Or will a new hybrid system emerge, where power is diffused across networks of states, platforms, and machines? The world has rewritten its monetary order 5 times in the last 5 centuries. Each shift crowned a new hegemon of global finance. But this time, the next monetary superpower may not have a flag, a border, or even a president. It might be something far quieter, a system that learns, a network that adapts, an intelligence that rewrites the rules faster than governments can respond. Here's what nobody tells you. The future of money may already be here, only we haven't realized who is actually in control.